action that will carry us away from the problem to the solution. Now, as Frank said, in the history of the world, for many, many years, the reason alcoholics suffered, we didn't understand the problem. You know, as we look at the problem of alcoholism, or whatever, you know, it's been called many, many things down through history. As men begin to drink, and as the figures, they use different figures, but they used to, old figures of 1 out of 10. We'll stick with that. Of every 10 people to drink, as they begin to drink, one of them had a problem. Now, what happened? The people who didn't have a problem, the so-called normal drinkers, they were the ones that tried to find out what was wrong with the guy who was having the problem. See, all the attitudes and concepts of the alcoholic were developed by the non-alcoholic. It was the non-alcoholics who said, what's wrong with him? He must be weak. He must be sinful. The problem drinker probably didn't worry about what the problem was. He probably just kept on drinking, you know. But all the misconceptions about alcoholism had developed by the non-alcoholic. And there are many, many, and one of my favorite, and I love to refer to this one, is, and there are many, many down through history, many in the one of the earliest recordings, I think, is one in the Bible, in Solomon, who is credited with writing Proverbs. And this is in Proverbs 23:29 to the end. He talks about people came to Solomon was a great social worker of his day. Everybody came to him with problems, and he had great insight into human problems. And probably someone asked him about one of us, as it appears in this chapter. And he said, who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has wounds without cause? He said, they that tarry long at the wine. and you know, and he went on to talk about what happens to people who do this. He said, you will be as one who lies down in the midst of a sea. You know how you sway around a lot? At night you feel like you're sleeping in the midst of a sea. And he said, you in the morning when you wake up, you will say they have beaten me and I felt it not. You know, the next morning you feel like somebody was beating on you. And he went on to describe some of the other things. He said he sure knew some of us fellas, because he said, thine eyes shall behold strange women, and thy heart shall utter perverse things. You know, you'll say a lot of things you don't want to say. But then as he closed it out, but he said, but still yet they will rise in the morning and seek it yet again. You know, that was such a beautiful, vivid description of alcoholism, and it would fit the alcoholics of our time. Wisdom is a lasting thing. But he didn't understand the problem. No one understood the problem, but we tried a lot of solutions in ignorance. You know, that's what we do when we don't understand a problem. We try to treat it whichever way we think it is. And many alcoholics continue to die. You know, it was, and then it came to, as Frank read about Dr. Benjamin Rush. He actually did discover what the problem was. Maybe not as clear. And this went on and continued. Many, many mistakes were made, and finally came down to Dr. Silkworth at the Towns Hospital. Dr. Silkworth went to work at the Towns Hospital. He didn't go there to bring all this about and to do what he wanted, what he did, but he went there because he couldn't find a job. It was during Depression. And he took a job at the Towns Hospital for $40 a week, working with drunks. He was a great doctor. But, you know, wasn't really what he wanted to do. You know, doctors just don't go to medical school to work with drunks. I mean, they just don't. They say we don't do what they tell us, which is probably true. And most of them say we don't pay our bills no way. So it ain't really no big deal to working with drunks. But Dr. Silkworth went there, and he worked with these people day in and day out. And this man had a great interest in people. And he said as he began to work, and he with alcoholics day in and day out, he began to accumulate certain ideas about this thing. And he said, there is some destructive force in these people. It's within them. And he was able to begin to accumulate an idea that he said, I believe part of it is in their body and part of it is in their mind. And he began to experiment during the years. And he began to accumulate and add to this concept and this ideas. And he shared it with Bill from the time of 1930 until he met Bill in 1933. He shared this with Bill. And it was just his idea, his concept of this illness. And it was this book, and it was Dr. Silkworth that was the first person to lend some meaning to this disease of alcoholism. And he shared it with Bill. And I often wonder, probably Bill was probably the first alcoholic in the world that really understood his problem. And it was from this that this is the foundation of recovery. When we found out, and our program shows us the exact nature of our problem. It was published in the front of the big book in 1939. Today, the whole world accepts the fact that alcoholism is a disease, but it began here with Dr. Silkworth in the front of our big book, which was entitled, This is My Opinion. He didn't say, I have found the answer. He said, this humble piece of literature, he says, this is my opinion. Now, after this opinion was put into practice, and 150,000 people sobered up in 1956, the American Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association finally accepted the fact that alcoholism is a disease. And it was the demonstration of this that improved the theory that was published in the front of this book. Now, so as we go through, and I think that, that see yet today with all the things that go on for alcoholics, I think we were very blessed. As I said last night, that we are members of Alcoholics Anonymous. We are the only people who know that we're alcoholics. I don't know what's wrong with them other people out there. And that's the first step to recovery. The first thing you got to do to get over something is find out you got it. And alcoholism is that's very difficult to do because it's the nature of alcoholism, the disease itself. One of the symptoms of the disease is that it tells the patient he ain't got it. That's why you can tell who's got it. The one that swears he ain't got it's got it. If you ask one of these social drinkers, you might be an alcoholic. He say, I might be. No, he ain't got it. He ain't got it. It's the one that ain't got it's got it. So the first step is find out you got it and then find out what it is. And this is what Dr. Silkworth gives to us, and this is the foundation of the big book, because it shows us the first step of what is the problem.
So let's begin to look at this problem by going to Roman numeral 24 in the doctor's opinion. Begin to look at some of his ideas. He says, the physician who at our request gave us this letter has been kind enough to enlarge upon his views in another statement which follows.
Oh, yeah.
Roman numeral 24.
Okay.
In this statement, he confirms that we who have suffered alcoholic torture must believe that the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as his mind. Now, for the first time that we can find, we have a statement referring to the fact that the body is affected as well as the mind. All those statements before, like weak will, moral character, sin, and etc., all dealt with the mind only. But here we find a reference to the fact that the body is also quite as abnormal as the mind. And I also like to look at the idea that he's stating not only is the body abnormal, but the mind is also when it comes to alcohol. It did not satisfy us to be told that we could not control our drinking just because we were maladjusted to life, that we were in full flight from reality, or were outright mental defectives. These things were true to some extent, in fact to a considerable extent with some of us, but we are sure that our bodies were sickened as well. In our belief, any picture of the alcoholic which leaves out this physical factor is incomplete. The doctor's theory that we have an allergy to alcohol interests us. As laymen, our opinion as to its soundness may of course mean little, but as ex-problem rakers we can say that his explanation makes good sense. It explains many things for which we cannot otherwise account. Now, if we are to use our book as a textbook, and if a textbook is meant to convey information from the mind of one human being or a group of human beings to the minds of another human being, thereby increasing their knowledge, and really that's what a textbook does, then the conveyance of that information, the transfer of it, will be based upon the words used in the textbook. And if the writer of the book uses a word and has one understanding of that word, and the reader of the book reads that word but has a different understanding, then the information that comes through is going to be garbled information. And we believe there's some key words in the big book that probably has given most of us a hard time. And one of these words happens to be the word allergy. Most of us prior to coming to AA, reading the big book, had a preconceived idea of what an allergy is. I knew that an allergy would be something that if you got around it, if you ate it or drank it, whatever it might be, that it would show itself through some visible indicator or some visible manifestation. For instance, if you're allergic to strawberries and you eat them, you break out in a rash. And the rash being the visible manifestation, the indicator of the allergy. If you're allergic to milk and you drink it, you have a bad case of dysentery. The dysentery being the indicator of the allergy. If you're allergic to ragweeds and you get around them, your eyes will itch, your nose itches, they begin to water, and you start sneezing. The itchy, watery eyes and nose, the sneezing being the physical manifestation of the allergy. So I knew what an allergy was before I came to AA. And I walked in AA and they said, "Charlie, you have an allergy to alcohol. You'll never be able to safely drink it again." And I said, "How in the hell can I be allergic to alcohol? I'm drinking a quart a day." Now, how can you possibly drink that much of something you're allergic to? And I said, besides that, it does not necessarily make me break out in a rash. It doesn't necessarily give me a bad case of dysentery. Once in a while it would, depending on what I'd been drinking, but usually it didn't. Nor did it necessarily make my eyes and nose itch, water, and cause me to sneeze. And I said, I don't understand what you're talking about. I don't understand how I'm allergic to alcohol. And they said, well, you don't need to understand. They said, all you got to do is just know that you're allergic to it and you can't drink it. Well, today I know why they told me that. Because they didn't understand it any better than I did. Now, I'd been in AA several months, and this thing about the allergy kept eating on me and eating on me and eating on me. And if you've got a keen intellectual alcoholic mind like I have, sooner or later you've got to find the answer to some of these questions. So one day I went to a source of information which has never failed me since that time, happened to be the Webster's Dictionary, and I looked up the word allergy. And I found several different meanings for that word, just like you do for any word, depending on how you're using it. But I think I found one that fits me just exactly. It says an allergy is an abnormal reaction to any food, beverage, or substance of any kind. An abnormal reaction. So I began to try to go back through my life and see if I was abnormal to alcohol and where it might be. And to my amazement, I realized that I don't know what is normal and what is abnormal. Because when you drink alcohol the way I drank it for as many years as I drank it, that becomes absolutely normal to you. And everybody that drank with me drank the way I drank, or we didn't drink together. So the only thing I knew about drinking was the way I drank and those that drank with me, so I really didn't know the difference between normal and abnormal. So therefore I had to go talk to the normal, social, temperate, moderate drinker, those who are non-alcoholic. And I asked them to describe to me how they feel whenever they take a drink. And usually they would tell me something like this. They say, well, we can come home from work, all tired and tense and wrought up from the day's work, and we can have a drink or two before dinner, and we get a comfortable, relaxing feeling, and then we go ahead and have dinner, and we probably won't drink any more that night. Well, now, I don't feel that way when I drink alcohol. Like I said last night, as I take a drink and I put it to my lips, as it passes over my lips, they get a tingling, burning, exciting feeling. And it hits my teeth, and they kind of chatter up and down. And it strikes my tongue, and I can feel my tongue begin to grow and expand and swell. And it hits my cheeks, and they kind of flutter in and out. And at the same time, I can feel it racing up through my sinus cavities into my forehead, and I get a feeling in my forehead which is absolutely indescribably wonderful. Well, I haven't even swallowed it yet. I've just got it in my mouth. And when I swallow that drink, and as it goes down through my esophagus, great things begin to take place. Immediately, my chest begins to grow and expand and get bigger and bigger. And it hits my stomach, and it just literally explodes like a bomb, and I can feel it racing through my arms, and they get longer and longer, and it hits my hands and my fingers, and they begin to tingle and vibrate. And at the same time, I feel it passing through my legs, and as it does, they get longer and longer, and I get taller and taller, and it hits my feet and my toes, and they get a hot, intense, burning, exciting, get up and go somewhere and do something feeling. I don't understand a comfortable, relaxing feeling when you take And today I'm quite sure that's one of the reasons I love to drink, because it made me feel different than it does the normal social drinker. I think another way I'm different is this. Those people who are normal social drinkers tell me, they say, whenever we take a drink or two of alcohol, we get a slightly tipsy, out of control, nauseous feeling.
That's right.
And they say we don't particularly like that feeling. Therefore, 1, 2, or 3 drinks is all they want to drink. And I used to watch them drink like that, and they'd have 1 or 2, and I'd say, come on, let's have another one. Come on, honey, let's have another one. Come on, drink another. And they'd say, no, I don't want any more. That's all. I feel it already. I don't want to drink any more. Now, I don't feel that way whenever I take a drink. I put a drink in my system, and instead of getting a slightly tipsy, out of control, I get an in control feeling. And instead of getting a nauseous feeling, my body reacts with an actual physical craving that demands more of the same. And today I find out that that's absolutely abnormal. The normal social drinker, their reaction to alcohol is the normal reaction. Alcohol is a toxic substance. Put into the human system over a period of time, it begins to destroy the system, and the mind and body can normally recognize what that stuff is. And the normal reaction to alcohol, if you put too much into it, is to vomit it back up. Now, we alcoholics don't get that feeling. Our body creates an actual physical craving which demands more of the same, and after we've had 2 or 3 drinks, then the body demands the 4th drink and the 5th drink and the 6th drink and the 7th drink and on till we're drunk, sick, and in all kinds of trouble. The actual physical craving is considered to be the manifestation or the indicator of the allergy to alcohol. Now, this only happens to 1 person out of 10. The only difference between normal and abnormal is what the majority of the people do. If 9 of them drink it that way with a slightly tipsy, out of control, nauseous feeling, and 1 of them drinks it the way I do, then we are considered to be abnormal or allergic to alcohol. And the manifestation being the physical craving that is produced after I've had 1, 2, or 3 drinks. Joe?
You know, this is strange as we look at that, and we see how, we alcoholics are always backwards. Most people, normal social drinkers, when they take a few drinks of alcohol, as soon as they feel the effects of alcohol, they are ready to stop. That's a normal reaction. Now, the alcoholic, as soon as he feels the effect, he's ready to start. I mean, it's just different. And I love these. It's amazing to me and Charlie. I think he and I both. We are, as an abnormal drinker, as an alcoholic. I am really fascinated by social drinkers. It's fascinating. I'm making a study of those. I like to. Charlie and I watch them in close when we get them on airplanes. That's when you watch them. when they get on, you know, they come by and they order those little ridiculous bottles. Isn't that amazing? You can tell how abnormal it is. It's senseless. And they'll bring them out $3 for that thing. and after they bring them out, they have these little sticks. And when they get it, I don't know, they pour it in there and they stir a lot. I don't know, it's some sort of ceremony they go through. I don't know what that is. And when they get it all stirred up, you know what they do? They read their magazines. That bugs the hell out of you. You say, drink it with you. You know, and they'll sip and fool with that thing for a whole, and sometimes they'll go off and leave part of it. A few years ago, Charlie and I saw a guy on a plane, and he was real articulate. He would measure that. He kept on doing that, and finally, he got exactly half of it, half of that ridiculous bottle in his drink. Then he screwed the top on real good, and he slid it in his pocket. Charlie, he's inquisitive. He just couldn't stand it. When we were going off the plane, Charlie touched him on the back and asked him, said, "What are you going to do with that but you put in your pocket?" He said, "I'm going to have me another drink when I get home." Now, if you understand that, you are not an alcoholic.
That's sick drinking. That's sick drinking.
Now, I think sometimes, you know, that we don't realize how abnormal we are. But as Dr. Silkworth said, you know, later on we're going to look, after you drink in an abnormal fashion, finally, abnormal becomes your normal way of drinking, and we do not understand that we are abnormal drinkers. We're getting on page Roman numeral 26. He's going to continue like any good textbook does, with a continual opening up or understanding of this idea. We believe, as so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker, as he's explaining this further. You know, the manifestation of the allergy is a phenomenon of craving, and we use that word phenomenon. And when we see that, it means something that we see occur that we can't explain, but we see it happening. It's limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. You know, normal drinkers do not crave alcohol. When they take a drink, they get a little noisy. They get a different reaction. They get a reaction that is a normal reaction to a toxic drug like alcohol. And they drink all. This is an amazing thing, too. You know, that normal social drinkers get all they want every time they drink. I drank for 16 years, and I can't remember one time getting enough. I mean, because I never did satisfy that craving. Now remember, we're talking about the physical part, the allergy of the body. And we hear a lot, you know, we're talking about the craving occurs after you put alcohol into the system. I hear a lot of people say, well, I quit drinking and I craved alcohol for 2 years. Well, you know, in the contents of the big book, craving occurs after you put alcohol into the system. You might have had an obsession for a while, but a craving occurs after you put alcohol into the body. It's a physical craving, and it occurs after we take the first drink.
He says these chronic alcoholics,
Yeah.
and many of us didn't like the word chronic, simply because we didn't understand what it meant. You know, hell, I'd been called everything else. So it's necessary for me to look up the word chronic, and it simply means, if you're chronic, it means you've done it more than once. Those of us that are alcoholic, of course, go back and repeatedly get drunk over and over again. He said that on the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. In other words, this physical craving that we get after we've had 1, 2, or 3 drinks never occurs to the average temperate drinker. They get all they want every time they drink. These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all, and once having formed a habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their self-confidence or reliance upon things human, their problems pile upon them and become astonishingly difficult to solve. Now, if we'll go over to Roman numeral, page 28. Again, he's going to expand on this idea just a little bit further, and he's going to talk here about 5 different types of drinkers, and then he's going to make a point regarding this phenomenon of craving, the manifestation of the allergy. Joe?
Okay. The classification of alcoholics seems most difficult, and in much detail is outside the scope of this book. So there are, of course, the psychopaths who are emotionally unstable. We are familiar with this type. They are always going on a wagon for keeps. They're over-remorseful, make many resolutions, but never a decision.
That's type 1.
That's one type. There's a type of man who is unwilling to admit that he cannot take a drink. He plans various ways of drinking. He changes his brand or his environment.
That's type 2.
There's a type who always believes that to be entirely free from alcohol for a period of time, he can take a drink without danger.
Type 3.
There's the manic depressive type, who is perhaps the least understood by his friends and about whom a whole chapter could be written.
Type 4. Now, I always thought that I was the next category, a type 5.
Charlie thinks this is him. Then there are types entirely normal in every respect, except in effect alcohol has upon them. They are often able, intelligent, friendly people.
I used to read that and I'd think, how the hell do you know so much about me anyway? Now he makes this point. All these and many others have one symptom in common.
One.
They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. This phenomenon, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy which differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity. It has never been, by any treatment which we are familiar, permanently eradicated. The only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. And I think what he's really saying to us in here is that if all we alcoholics in this room tonight should take a drink, God forbid that happen, but if we did, we would not all react exactly the same. If we'd all take a drink tonight, in just a few minutes, there'll be one of us over in the corner crying in our beer. Oh, boo-hoo-hoo, the world isn't treating me right.
Manic depression.
In just a little while, there'll be another one up on the table right out in the middle of the floor, hooping and hollering and cutting up and having a hell of a good time. A little later, you look over in another corner, and there'll be 2 of us over there getting in a fight, just sure as anything. Look back in this corner over here, and there'll be 2 of us over here, one putting the make on the other. We tend to do that also, when we drink. Now, we would all do probably different things, but there is one thing we would all do. As soon as we had that first drink down, we would start looking for a second drink, and a third drink, and a fourth drink, and a fifth drink, because that drink we put in our system triggered the phenomenon of craving. The allergy takes over, and we cannot stop drinking. Now, I know that's true, because if that wasn't true, we wouldn't be sitting here in this room tonight. If we alcoholics could drink without getting drunk, we wouldn't be in AA, and we wouldn't be sitting in this meeting tonight. And I don't think it really makes any difference when that took place in our life. Now, I'm one of those that I believe I was allergic the first drink I ever took. I ended up drunk. And every time I drank more than I should drink. I can never remember taking one drink of anything with alcohol in it. So I really believe that probably I was born that way. Some of you, though, may have had several years of trouble-free drinking. You might have had a year, 2, 3, 5, 10, 15, but somewhere down the line you crossed over into an area where you begin to have trouble. And you'd start drinking and you'd end up drunker than you intended to be, and as time went by that got worse and worse and worse. I know that's true because we wouldn't be in this room tonight if it wasn't true. So I really don't think it makes any difference whether we're born with it or where we drink ourselves into it. The end result is that that's the way we are tonight. Also, I don't think it makes any difference how long it takes us to get drunk. I think the allergy is more pronounced in some than others. I'm the type alcoholic that has progressed in me to the point that if I'd take a drink at 9 in the evening, by 10:30 in the evening, I found me a policeman and I'm locked up in jail somewhere. Some of you may have 1 or 2 drinks tonight, and 3 or 4 tomorrow night, and 5 or 6 the next night, And it may take you a week to get good and drunk. But it really doesn't make any difference whether it takes us an hour, a day, or a week to get drunk. The thing that triggers it and starts it is the allergy to alcohol, the phenomenon of craving that is produced after we have put the alcohol in our system. And I think that's the one thing we really have in common in AA. So many times as we sit around and listen to each other talk, we try to unidentify. He says, I've been in jail 28 times. And I say, I'm not like him. I've just been there 14. Or she said, I've had 5 husbands. Well, I'm not like her. I've just had 2 wives. But I think the one thing we have in common is the phenomenon of craving. It doesn't make any difference how old we are, how young we are. Doesn't make any difference whether we're male or female. Doesn't make any difference whether we're black or white. Doesn't make any difference whether we're rich or poor. Doesn't make any difference whether we're Protestant or Catholic. Doesn't make any difference whether we're Republican or Democrat. It seems to be the one thing in common in AA is the phenomenon of craving that develops after we take the first drink. This is what Dr. Silkworth gave to the world. This was the idea that he had that all the successful treatment programs are based on today. Now, there's been some information come out in the last few years that I think we would be remiss if we didn't share it. And the information that we're going to look at really does prove the doctor's opinion. And let us be the first to say that this is not AA information. AA is not about to get involved in why we're allergic, because that's going to create controversy. But this information has such depth and such interest, I think we would be remiss if we didn't share it. Let's take a look at some of the things the medical profession has come up with in the last few years that pretty well proves the doctor's opinion. Joe?
I'll put it on.
Yeah, I'll get it.
Okay. Now we're going to look at the physical side, and this is brings out to the theory. And looking at the left-hand side of the chart, we're going to look at the physical allergy. We'll be looking at the way that normal people break the 9 out of. We have 9 people on one side and 1 person over here. We're going to look at the normal reaction to alcohol. How do these normal so-called social drinkers metabolize alcohol? Go ahead.
Back in the 1930s, when the doctor was developing this opinion, they didn't know a whole lot about metabolism.
Yeah.
Today they do. Today they know that if you take something and put it in your body, such as a piece of beefsteak, that the mind and body can sense what it is. Certain organs of the body will begin to produce things called enzymes. Those enzymes will attack that piece of beefsteak, and they will begin to break it down, and the body can then separate it into usable and non-usable items. Those things such as the proteins, the amino acids, the vitamins, those things essential for life, the body can separate and retain and use them. The unusable items are dissipated normally through the urinary and the intestinal tract, and over a period of time the piece of beefsteak disappears. It has been metabolized by the body. And the body has the ability to do that with anything you put in it, provided it's not a deadly poison that destroys and kills the body before it can metabolize it. It can do it with almost anything put in it. It does the same thing with a liquid that it does with a solid food. So if we look at this picture, we look at the center line, and those are the 9 people who can drink safely. Those are the 9 people who are at ease with alcohol. They take a drink, they put it in the system, the mind and body senses what it is, the enzyme production begins, the enzymes attack the alcohol and break it down first to a material called acetaldehyde. Then after a period of time it's broken down to diacetic acid. Then after a period of time to acetone. And then in the final stages it's broken down to a simple carbohydrate made up of water, sugar, and carbon dioxide. Now the sugar can be used by the body. That's calories, that's energy. Interestingly enough, they're empty calories, none of the vitamins, none of the amino acids, but it's a form of energy that the body can use, can burn, and it does so. The excess will be stored in the body as fat. The water will be dissipated through the urinary and intestinal tract, the carbon dioxide will be dissipated through the lungs. Now, in the normal social drinker, this metabolism takes rate at approximately 1 ounce per hour. If the normal social drinker does not drink more than 1 ounce per hour, they cannot get drunk. And very seldom will they drink more than that. Because remember, they get the slightly tipsy, out of control, nauseous feeling. And if they start drinking more than 1 ounce per hour, you better get out of the way. Because it's going to come back up after a while. Now that's the normal way alcohol is metabolized. In the left-hand column is the one who is abnormal, the one who is at dis-ease with alcohol. And that's all the word disease means, something that separates you from the norm. We alcoholics take a drink, put it in a system, the same process begins. The enzyme production starts, it attacks the alcohol, breaks it down to acetaldehyde, then to diacetic acid, and then to acetone. Now it seems as though in the body of the alcoholic, those enzymes necessary to break it from acetone to the simple carbohydrate are not there in the same qualities and quantities they are in the body of the non-alcoholic. Therefore, it stays in the body of the alcoholic for a much longer period of time as acetone. Now, the medical profession has proven today that acetone ingested into the human body that remains there for an appreciable period of time will produce an actual physical craving that demands more of the same. In the body of the non-alcoholic, it goes through that stage so rapidly that the craving never is produced. But in the body of the alcoholic, remaining there for a longer period of time, the acetone itself produces an actual physical craving for more of the same, and the body then begins to demand the second drink, and the third drink, and the fourth drink, and that physical craving is so strong that it overcomes the ability of the mind to stop us after we have once started. So the second drink and the third drink and the fourth drink, because of the acetone, leads us into the well-known spree. And of course we emerge from that remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. The medical profession has proven today that the craving does exist, that it is produced one of these byproducts from alcohol, and it really is abnormal. It only happens to approximately 1 person out of 10. Now, not only do we have the disease of alcoholism, we have a progressive disease of alcoholism, meaning that it never gets better, it never stays the same, it always gets worse. And it does that for 2 reasons. Today, the medical profession has also proven that acetone ingested into the human system over an appreciable period of time becomes an actual destroyer of human tissue. It is toxic to the body. And it seems as though the first parts of the body that it begins to destroy in most cases happen to be the liver and the pancreas. Today they have proven that the enzymes necessary to metabolize alcohol are produced by the liver and the pancreas. So as we drink over a period of time, the acetone itself begins to destroy the liver and the pancreas, and the enzyme production becomes less and less and less as time goes by. And the smaller number of enzymes produced, then the higher the phenomenon of craving and the harder the drinking. So over a period of years, this phenomenon of craving becomes worse and worse and worse. Also, we know that as we get older, the body begins to shut down on the production of everything. I wish that were not true, but it does happen to be. And as I become older, the ability to metabolize alcohol becomes less and less due to the aging factor, because of the fact that the body is producing less enzymes due to aging. I haven't had a drink in a little over 19 years. But if I'd take a drink today, I would not start where I left off 19 years ago. The phenomenon of craving would be much worse, the drinking would be much harder, the trouble would be much greater because of the aging factor. So for 2 reasons, I am in the grips of a progressive disease as well as just a disease. Now, Joe and I have looked at countless study after study after study, and they may have the words a little differently in one study than they do in this particular one, But all of them point to and prove one thing, that the body of the alcoholic is abnormal when it comes to alcohol. Therefore, we are allergic to alcohol. Now, this wouldn't bother me at all if I didn't drink alcohol. There's no way there's no way strawberries can produce a rash in my body if I don't eat strawberries. There's no way milk can give me dysentery if I don't drink milk. There's no way that alcohol can produce the phenomenon of craving in my body and cause me to get drunk if I don't drink alcohol. So the only thing I have to do to control the allergy is just don't drink. But you know, there's something else wrong with me too. I'm like a friend of mine who has an allergy to, of all things, fish. And when he eats fish, his throat swells up and he almost chokes to death. And every time he tries it, he goes back to the hospital. Now, the fact that he's allergic to fish is really beside the point. Because if he didn't eat fish, that could not happen to him. But his mind from time to time seems to tell him that it's all right to eat fish. And I'll bet you it nearly always says, I haven't had any fish in 90 days, so surely I could eat one piece of fish. It might say it's that rock cod I've been eating. If I would eat nothing but good bass, that wouldn't happen to me. Or it might say it's them damn people I've been eating fish with if I'd just changed. Whatever the reason his mind tells him it's okay, then he eats the fish, then the allergy takes over. And it seems as though I'm the same way. Left on my own resources, I seem to be unable to keep from taking that first drink. And then the first drink triggers the allergy, and then I can't stop drinking. Joe?
Okay. And again, we would like to look at also that this craving is really intensified if the craving comes from alcohol. You know, once we take one drink of alcohol, it produces a phenomenon of craving from one drink. And once this craving starts, the craving will cause us to take the second drink. And when we take the second drink, the craving is intensified because it is twice as hard as it was because we have doubled the amount of alcohol. So the more we drink, the more we increase the craving and the less chance of control. And this builds and builds and builds and builds, and we can see an increase of the phenomenon of craving as we keep intaking alcohol. And he says we go through the well-known spree. Now, because of this, and if we have this, then we'll summarize this left side of the sheet. Because of the body, we can't safely drink alcohol. We can't drink safely, he says. These allergy types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. And once having formed the habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance upon human things, their problems pile up and they become astonishingly difficult to solve. So we summarize that we can't safely use alcohol. This is because of the body. Now, later on, our book is going to get into it in a little more depth. And what we got, I think that, and it also says here is that we need to understand this. The main problem of the alcoholic is in his mind, not the body. Although we as alcoholics should know about our physical allergy, there's nothing we can do about it, and it's probably going to get worse. But the main problem of the alcoholic is not in his body, it's in his mind. That, why do we take that first drink? And here's where all the solution is going to work. Here's where we're going to recover, in the mind, although the body is going to get worse. I always associate this with a problem I have. I got another problem. In the neighborhood I grew up, where I grew up at that time, we didn't have swimming pools in those years. So I didn't learn to swim. I never learned to swim. Can't swim today. There's two things I can't do at all. I can't swim and I can't drink. But I don't have any problem with that swimming. I never have had an obsession to jump in the water. No problem. It's different, But I always had an obsession to try to drink, and I couldn't drink. That's my main problem, was that obsession, that mental thing That was my main problem. So he begins in describing this on the bottom of page Roman numeral 26. He says, men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol.
Now, many alcoholics are highly offended when you tell them that. They say, oh no, that's not why I drink. They say, the reason I drink is because I love the taste of alcohol. Well, I wouldn't argue with anybody whether they love the taste of it or not. You know, I love the taste of cold beer, always have all my life. I also love the taste of cold mountain spring water. And I never did sit down and drink a case of cold mountain spring water. You know, alcohol makes me feel differently than it does normal people. As a kid growing up, always on the outside of the crowd looking in, never could really function in society. Always afraid of whatever I said, whatever I did would be the wrong thing. And one night somebody gave me a drink of alcohol, and all those feelings disappeared. And I was allowed to join in with the rest of the kids. I was allowed to do the things they were doing. I was allowed to dance with a girl. I was allowed to take her home from the dance. I was allowed to get her in the back seat of a 36 Chevrolet and do some things that I'd been wanting to do. I'd never been able to do them before. I loved the effect produced by alcohol. And my mind immediately became obsessed with the idea of drinking alcohol. Anytime I was on the outside, didn't feel good. Anytime I was afraid I'd be in a position where I would be embarrassed, I could always take a drink, and it changed the way I felt. It did not give me a slightly tipsy, out of control, nauseous feeling. It became the answer to all my problems.
The sensation is so elusive, as while they admit it is injurious, that they cannot after a time differentiate the truth from the false.
If we're going to work with the alcoholic, we must understand that the practicing alcoholic doesn't see where they are. They really cannot differentiate the true from the false. To them, what they're doing is absolutely normal. The practicing alcoholic does not know the difference between normal and abnormal drinking any more than I did.
That's right.
And they really cannot differentiate the true from the false.
Now he tells the state of the mind. He says they are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks which they see others taking with impunity, after they have succumbed to desire again, as so many do, and a phenomenon of craving develop, they pass through the well-known stage of the spree, emerging marked with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over. Unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery. So now he's going to explain this trick of the mind. Over on this chart, over on the right-hand side of the chart, this is the mind. And we say if it wasn't for if we can't drink, but if it was all, we could just quit drinking. But the main problem is in the mind. And it's indicated in this little emotional barometer that we have over here. You know, we have a very complex emotional life. We are God's greatest creation. And we marvel at other things of the world, but man is God's greatest creation. There is nothing as complicated and beautiful as the human body and the human mind. We are the greatest thing on the face of this earth. We have a very complex chemical life, our bodies, and we also have a very complex emotional life. And we have a lot of emotions, and all of us have problems with it. And by the way, we alcoholics are not the only people. Everyone has problems with their emotions. No one is perfect. It's a very complex thing. And somewhere, usually in life, these things build up on us, and as Charlie saw, but maybe we become lonely, maybe we don't think we fit in, maybe are selfish. All the many different feelings are going on within us. And Bill said that this is the root of all human problems. All human problems are born in here, and they're expressed in different ways. They cause all kind of behavior problems and everything, but all human problems begin right within the individual. But the alcoholic to be, somehow by having one of these emotional builds up, the doctor said he'd become restless, irritable, and discontented. He builds up on his little emotional level, And I think each and every one of us have an individual process that's not the same in each individual. No two of us have the same tolerance level. But somewhere along the line, as it builds up to this point, and he's got him a big stick there now. He builds up to this point, and he's restless and discontent, and it happens to be occasion, so he has a few drinks of alcohol. And he noticed that when he took these few drinks of alcohol, he has a sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking a few drinks of alcohol. And these few drinks depresses his emotion, and as the end result, he feels better. So he had a problem for a period of time in his life. And once he has these few drinks, his problem finds a solution. Now he's got a combination. Now the human mind, and that's a part of everybody's mind. It's nothing foreign. It's nothing different. When the mind has a problem and it finds a solution, we have a memory bank too. We usually memorize the solution so that next time we have the problem, we don't have to go through that whole process. We remember what we did the last time. And that's part of everybody's life. It's not that certain people have it, all humans have it. You know, if your TV was broke here today, if that was your problem, your TV was broken, you were in town, and you hunted in the yellow pages for someone to fix it, found a friend maybe, and you found a TV repairman come over and did you a good job on your TV, and that he would become your solution. 6 months from now, when your TV broke, you wouldn't go in the yellow pages, you wouldn't call a friend, you would remember the guy who fixed it this time. You would repeat success. See, we go to the same beauty shop, you go to the same barber shop, you buy the same kind of car, you buy the same products. We repeat success. And that's all addiction is. We're all addicted in a way, a sense. It's according to what we use it on. It's a constructive if used in the right thing. We all remember success. And addiction means to add together. Mental addiction. And what we do, we add that together. Once we become restless and irritable and discontent, we have a few drinks. And it depresses it and gets rid of our problem. So the next time we become restless and irritable and discontent, we reach our tolerance level, and that triggers an obsession. An obsession is that line that goes across. An obsession is an idea that overcomes all other ideas. You know, all action is born in thought. The body can't do anything unless the mind gives its consent. And when we become painful, we will remember the sense of ease and comfort. Later on, our book says, once we remember the sense of ease and comfort, we can't even remember the problems the drink caused us 3 weeks ago. Why? Because we can only remember the relief we're going to get. And it blocks out everything else. And it's obsession. It's an idea that pushes out all other ideas. When we want the sense of ease and comfort, and we reach over and we take a few drinks. Now once we take the few drinks, then it becomes a physical problem. Because the alcohol is in the system, it goes over and triggers phenomenal craving, and the craving produces a third drink, and a fourth drink, and a fifth drink, and a sixth drink. We go through the well-known spree. We finish that drinking spree, and we emerge remorseful with a firm resolution. And we repeat our alcoholic national anthem. I will never do that again. And we really mean it. We really mean it to that point. But then we build up again. We become restless, irritable, and discontented. And that comes through everyday living. It comes through just going to work, doing the ordinary things, being bored. And we trigger the idea to drink again, and we reach over, take a few drinks, and that sets off the body again. Dr. Silkworth said this is repeated over and over again, this vicious cycle. Now the body is making us put alcohol into the system. The chemical deficiency gets worse over the years. The craving gets harder. As the drinking gets harder, as the craving gets harder, the drinking gets harder. And as the drinking gets harder, more emotional problems we create for ourselves to take the first drink. So what we're saying, the mind is destroying the body, and the body is reverse destroying the mind. And we'll add these two things together, and we'll come up with the first step. If you can't drink because of the physical allergy of the body, and you can't quit because of the mind, then you are powerless over alcohol. Now, this is the exact nature. That's what Dr. Silkworth gave us. And I love the statement that said, we find the solution is simple. It's a real simple. The solution is simple once you understood the problem. But we never understood this. Now, once we understand this, we can find a solution. You know, for many years, I didn't understand my problem. And I don't know if any of y'all did. I think most of us did. I tried to control my drinking while drinking. I don't know if any of y'all tried that. I never was successful. I said, I'm going to take 3, but the phenomenal craving I know got me. I didn't understand that. But today I do. And then after about 13 years of drinking and failure, one day I said to myself, you know, I don't believe you can drink. And then I decided to quit. Now, when an alcoholic gets ready to quit, he goes over there, and I didn't know anything about the obsession. I didn't know what to do, but I got my best weapon out. And when an alcoholic gets ready to quit, he gets will out, willpower. Boy, we depend on willpower. So I put old Will in there, and I said, sick 'em, Will, I'm through with this booze. And I just blocked it out for 9 months with willpower. I was restless, irritable, and discontent. The obsession drink came at me constantly. And finally, one morning, one of them little devils got across, and I was gone again. But you can't really be successful with willpower. One thing about willpower only works when the mind sees that what it's about to do is wrong. As long as it's wrong, willpower will defend you. One of the tricks of the alcoholic's mind is certain times the alcoholic mind will tell him it's all right to drink. It will give us consent to drink, that it's all right. And when they tell you it's all right, then willpower does not work. So what we're going to do is come over to this emotional barometer. We're going to find the solution. The solution is in the mind. Our book is going to be talking about the solution to this problem is real simple. It's not in the allergy. It's not in willpower. But it's over here in our emotional barometer. If we could have some personality changes, this is good enough. If we could live below that line where the obsession is triggered, then we wouldn't have any problem with the allergy. So this is what we're going to be looking at as we go into the solution. And we're going to be looking at, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. We're going to be looking at personality changes sufficient, good enough to recover. We're going to look at changes in the mind rather than the body. And this came from we were able to develop this once Dr. Silkworth gave us the first step, really. It came directly from Dr. Silkworth at the Towns Hospital.
I think the key to this is that whenever we're sober, we're restless, irritable, and discontented. And we don't feel good. And our minds filled with shame, fear, guilt, and remorse, and we want to feel better. And the mind begins to remember that sense of ease and comfort, the way that first drink or two makes us feel. And then maybe we say, no, we can't drink because we've quit drinking. But the problems remain, we don't feel good, and the mind keeps saying, well, you know, 1 drink would be all right. Or anybody that's been sober 90 days could surely have 1 drink. Or anybody that's been sober 91 days have proven they're not alcoholic. Or anybody that's been sober 93 days owes themselves a couple of drinks. And then suddenly, the mind can't remember what alcohol does to us. It can only remember that sense of ease and comfort that's going to come by the first couple of drinks. And it blanks out the suffering and the pain and the humiliation of the last drunk. And it says it's okay to drink. And based on that idea, we take a drink. And then the drink triggers the allergy, and then we can't stop. So to me, the key to it would be to find a way to live sober and not be restless, irritable, and discontent. Not be filled with shame, fear, guilt, and remorse. And if I can find a way to live sober and feel good at the same time, then it isn't necessary for me to take a drink in order to feel better. Dr. Silkworth says, on the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, and he's dealing with the mind when he's talking about the psychic, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol, the only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules. And I think it's extremely important that I understand that I'm allergic to alcohol. You know, that kind of shuts the door for me. I tried to drink it every way there was, knowing there had to be some way I could. And now that I understand that I'm allergic, I realize I can't drink. And it's important for me to know that. But what's really important for me is to find a way to live where I don't have to drink. And all recovery is going to come about through the mind. Now, this is not strange. Many people in the world have many obsessions of the mind. You know, we have a certain group of people who are obsessed with eating certain foods. And they eat them and it seems to trigger an allergy and they can't stop eating. And they pass through the well-known stages of a binge. And they emerge from that remorseful with a firm resolution not to do that again. And they really do not intend to eat that, whatever it is. But as time goes by, they don't feel good. And they begin to remember the sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking 2 Hostess Twinkies. And the next thing you know, the mind leads them back into trying it again. And they trigger the allergy and they can't stop. I know that's true. Because we have a group of people in the world today who are literally destroying their lives and the lives of those around them because of their obsession with food. You know, we have another fellowship called Overeaters Anonymous that uses the same program to overcome an obsession of the mind. We have a group of people in the world today who are obsessed with, of all things, gambling. And the real gambler tells me, he said, when I make a bet, that I get a feeling in my body as well as my mind, which is indescribably wonderful. And he makes the bet, and then he can't stop. And he goes through the well-known gambling spree. And he emerges remorseful with the firm resolution not to do that again. But when he's not gambling, he doesn't feel good. And the mind begins to remember the sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by making a $2 bet. And the next thing you know, he's conned himself into believing he can do that. I know this is true, because we have another fellowship called Gamblers Anonymous to overcome an obsession of the mind. We have a group of people who are obsessed with all things stopping other people from drinking. Now, I don't know what it is they get out of it, but apparently they enjoy it. Because they continually try it over and over and over and over again, trying everything they can possibly think of to stop another human being from drinking. And finally they realize they can't do that, and they swear off and they say, I'll never do that again. And when they're not chasing that drunk and trying to control, they are restless, irritable, and discontented. And their mind begins to dwell on the sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by chasing that sucker again. And they go right back into it over and over and over. They literally destroy their lives. I know that's true, because we have another fellowship called Al-Anon, which uses the same program to overcome an obsession of the mind. Dr. Silkworth gave us this information. Now, he could not tell us how to have the psychic change, but he could tell us that's what we needed to overcome our disease of alcoholism. So tonight we see the problem in its entirety. We see that we are physically allergic to alcohol. We see that we have an obsession of the mind that leads us back to drinking alcohol. We see that we have become absolutely powerless over alcohol, and our life has become unmanageable. And if we haven't been drinking it long enough, if we keep on, life will sure enough get unmanageable after a while. So now we see the problem. And that's all we're going to try to do tonight. So thank you for being here tonight. We hope to see you in the morning. Good morning, everybody. My name is Charlie Farnman. I'm a very grateful recovering alcoholic.
Yes, Charlie.
Because I'm a member of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, and by the grace of the power that I found in the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I haven't found it necessary to take a drink for 6,982 days today, one day at a time, and for this I'm very grateful. Isn't it great to be awake on Saturday morning and be able to see the sunshine and hear the birds sing and know where your car is this morning? Know where you slept last night? Know who you slept with, if anybody. Remember whether it was good or not. That's one of the real side benefits of sobriety. You can remember a lot of things. I've gone about as far as I can go without telling a little joke. Those of you that know Joe and I know we love to laugh and love to cut up and love to have fun. Some of you, I'm sure, have heard most of our jokes. But we tell them so good that they bear repeating. One particular joke that I always love is about a young lady who was having problems in the breast department. They were not large enough. She wanted to get them enlarged. And she had heard of a specialist doctor named Dr. Vanderpool. And he specialized in that particular kind of work. So she went to him to see if he could help her, and he examined her, and he said, sure. He said, there's several ways that we can do an enlargement procedure. He said, but I need to warn you that most of them are fairly painful, and most of them cost quite a bit of money. He said, really, in the last few years, I have developed an exercise that if you will follow it and follow it faithfully, do it twice a day, I guarantee you that over a period of time it'll work and do the same job. And she said, oh, great, doctor, fine, tell me what it is. He said, you have to stand and put your feet together, and you put your arms out at the side, and you say, Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow. And everywhere that Mary went, that lamb was sure to go. He said, if you'll do that every day, 8 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, never miss, I guarantee you it'll work. She said, oh, fine, doctor, thank you. She goes home, and on a daily basis, she begins to do her exercise. One day, while walking to an airport terminal building to catch an airplane, bags in hand, she looked up at the clock on the wall, and it said 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And she said, oh my God, what do I do now? I don't dare do that exercise here in front of all these people. But then she said, well, what difference would it make? They wouldn't know what I'm doing, and they don't know who I am anyway. So she sets her bags down, puts her feet together, puts her arms out the side. She said, Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow. And everywhere that Mary went, that lamb was sure to go. Now, a guy over against the wall had been watching her, and he sidled up to her and he said, lady, do you happen to know a Dr. Vanderpool? And she said, yes, I do. How do you know him? And he said, Hickory, Hickory.
My name is Joe. And I'm a real alcoholic. I've been working on this guy for a long time. He ain't no better. It's good to be back this morning. I think I'm always enthused each Friday night, and we have the opportunity to go with a group to go through the doctor's opinion, and I could see it last night, see the power of the program work. And so much we see the words of the book come alive. We see that the doctor's opinion, the first step, is the foundation of recovery. In fact, it's the foundation of everything that we're going to discuss this weekend. Because the better we understand the problem, the better the solution in our recovery will be. So that is the foundation of all this information. And we found out in the doctor's opinion that we had an allergy to alcohol, and because of the allergy, we can't safely use alcohol in any form. And because of the obsession, we can't quit drinking. Therefore, we found out we were powerless over alcohol. And this is the first step in recovery. Now that using the textbook, and we proceed through the textbook, And the book of Alcoholics Anonymous is a textbook, and a textbook is a book that gives ideas, teaches with a sequence of ideas. It carries the ideas from the minds of one person to the ideas to the mind of the next person in a sequence, a correct sequence. And it's the first 100 people. These are the things that they learned, and they have passed them along to us. Just like any great textbook, when it gives an idea, it proceeds to continue to teach along that line, to open and explain the point further. And once we read and study the doctor's opinion, next we have is Bill's story. And Bill's story is a classic example of the problem. You know, if you were in a medical school and you would be in a classroom, they would teach you about a particular illness. Then they would take you out in the ward and show you someone who had the same illness you had been learning about. And that's what Bill's story does in the textbook. It gives us an example of what we have already understood in the first step, or in the doctor's opinion. Now remember, in the earlier days of AA, at the time this book was written, even before AA, when they were Oxford group members, in the earlier days, what they would do, they would go out on a 12-step call, or whatever they called it at that time, to see the new alcoholic. When they sat down with a new alcoholic, they would always tell the new alcoholic their story. They would sit down and tell them their problem with alcoholism. They would talk about, on a 12-step call, you're actually talking about your first step. You are going back to the first step with a new person. See, this new alcoholic, he doesn't know he's an alcoholic, as we said last night. He has a problem, and he can't identify it, and he don't know what it is. But if we can, on a 12-step call, if we can lay down our problem and explain the situation we were in, then that new alcoholic can find himself in us. So this is what they did. They did this very, very skillfully. And so Bill knew that when this book was written, that there was no way there was anybody in 1939 going to be able to come and sit down with you, the new reader. This book had to be complete. So Bill's story is there for the new reader to be able to identify with, or to help the new reader see his problem, or to take step one. And it fits right behind the doctor's opinion, because this is the way it was done in those days, and this is the way it's still done today. You know, most alcoholics think when you come out to talk to them on a 12-step call that you're going to be talking about his drinking. You know, everybody talks about you drinking. Yeah, but when we go on a 12-step call, we don't talk about his drinking. We talk about our drinking, so that he can find himself in our story.
I think as we read and study Bill's story, we're going to be able to see two or three things. First thing we're going to be able to see, as Joe says, is identification with another alcoholic. And I think that's the one great thing that one alcoholic can do for another that nobody else can do. Most alcoholics are used to somebody talking to them about their drinking. I know I was. My wife always talked to me about my drinking. The police talked to me about my drinking. The banker talked to me about my drinking. And an alcoholic walked in my kitchen one day, and he talked to me about his drinking. And through him talking to me about his drinking, I was able to see myself. For the first time, I could see my problem. For the first time, I could see my disease. And he talked to me not only about his drinking, but he talked to me about his recovery. And through him talking to me about his recovery, I could see what I would need to do in order to recover also. So really what we do on a 12-step call is exactly like they were doing back in the 30s. We're helping another alcoholic see step one and step two. Now, Bill knew when the book was put out that those people in Arkansas, that they couldn't talk to them on a one-on-one basis. So Bill's story is put in here for identification, classic 12-step call. Also, I believe Bill's story probably is the beginning of hope. If we read and study Bill's story and see the progression of his disease and see him recover, then we begin to believe that maybe that can happen to us also, providing we're able to identify with Bill. And many people say, well, I can't identify with Bill Wilson because, after all, he was a night school lawyer and we were not. And after all, he was a New York City stockbroker and we were not. But I think if we, in going through Bill's story, look for points that we can identify with, rather than points that we unidentify with, that we'll all be able to make identification with Bill Wilson as another practicing alcoholic. And in looking at Bill's story, we always like to start at the bottom of page 1, where he says, 22 and a veteran of foreign wars, I went home at last. I fancied myself a leader, for had not the men of my battery given me a special token of appreciation. My talent for leadership, I imagine, would place me at the head of vast enterprises, which I would manage with the utmost assurance. I already identify with Bill Wilson. On page 2, he said, I took a night law course and obtained employment as investigator for a surety company. The drive for success was on. I'd proved to the world I was important. I have no trouble identifying with Bill Wilson. That's all I ever really wanted to do, was just prove to the rest of the world that I'm just as important as they are. And that drive for success was always on. He said, my work took me about Wall Street, and little by little I became interested in the market. Many people lost money, but some became very rich. Why not I? I studied economics and business as well as law. Potential alcoholic that I was, I nearly failed my law course. At one of the finals, I was too drunk to think or write. Though my drinking was not yet continuous, it disturbed my wife. We had long talks when I would still her forebodings by telling her that men of genius conceive their best projects when drunk. I have no trouble identifying with Bill Wilson. By the time I had completed the course, I knew the law was not for me. The law was not exciting enough for Bill. He completed his course, but he never did really go into the law business. He said, the inviting maelstrom of Wall Street had me in its grip. Business and financial leaders were my heroes. Out of this alloy of drink and speculation, I commenced to forge the weapon that would one day turn in its flight like a boomerang and all but cut me to ribbons. Living modestly, my wife and I saved $1,000. It went into certain securities, then cheap and rather unpopular. I rightly imagined that they would someday have a great rise. I failed to persuade my broker friends to send me out looking over factories and managements, but my wife and I decided to go anyway. I had developed a theory that most people lost money in stocks through ignorance of markets. I discovered many more reasons later on. Now, the time that Bill is referring to, of course, is in the late 20s, the beginning of the 30s, and we know at that time the stock market was on a roll. Everybody was making money. About all you had to do was buy stock, hold on to it a little while, sell it, take your profits, buy some more, hold on, sell, take your profits, buy some more. And Bill began to say such things as, someday this bubble might burst. Someday the stock market may not be as good as it is now. And he began to say, maybe we ought to start investigating companies, see what they're actually worth, see what their assets are, see what the stock's selling for, see what the dividends are, and start making our decisions based upon actual knowledge and fact rather than on pure speculation. Now, being a good alcoholic, he said to those that had money, I don't have any money to do this, but if you'll finance me, I'll go do it and I'll bring back the reports to you. And they said to Bill, no, thank you, Bill, we don't need to do that. We're making all the money that we need to make. We see no need for expenditures of that kind. And again, being a good, stubborn, bull-headed, hard-headed alcoholic, Bill said, well, to hell with them. I'll just go anyhow. So he took his $1,000.